sometimes people see their challenges as something that's preventing them from being able to do more. And I don't see my challenges that way. I love my scars. I love my surgeries because it has all added to my story. It's given me something to overcome. It has allowed me to have a unique experience where I've had these obstacles, I've overcome them, and they've made me stronger because I had to figure out how to move forward. Welcome to the Dangerous Women podcast, where the intersection of fierceness and femininity fuels empowerment. Our goal is to provide women with insights to unleash their power. Grounded in the 7 principles of self-confidence, we guide women to embrace their duality, delicate as a flower, yet powerful as a bomb. I'm your host, Colleen Conlon, inviting you to join me as we explore topics on health and wellness, empowering you to embody the essence of your dangerous woman. I have had 4 major abdominal surgeries, and I want to share the story behind all of those with you right now, and then get to how it has impacted me from a health standpoint and how I've been able to gain sensation back in my abdominals after losing it for roughly 8 years. So when I was 17, I had this crazy pain. I remember the day before I went out with a friend to get a sub at a sandwich shop, and I really thought I just had food poisoning, and I didn't expect there to be something bigger that was wrong. And I remember just being in so much pain. My stomach was extremely distended, and I remember sitting in the car with my mom on the way to school, and I was like, Mom, I think there's something really wrong. I don't think I can go to school. I'm in so much pain. And she was like, do we need to go to the hospital? And I was like, yeah, I think we need to go to the hospital. Like, this is terrible. And up until this point, I had a lot of painful periods, and I was like, this is definitely not a painful period. Up until this point, been sick with the flu. I've had stomach viruses before, and this just felt really different. I had this crazy amount of pain in the lower right quadrant of my abdominals. I get to the hospital, and they, do the tests that they need to do. And we find out instantaneously, or at least it feels really quick, that it's my appendix. So they get me ready for surgery. I get my appendix taken out, and everything is totally fine. And while they're inside, they see that I have all of these abnormally large ovarian cysts. And particularly, there's one that's really big. So I have this in my medical report. It says that it is the size of a basketball. And not when you think of a basketball, you're probably thinking like a full blown up basketball. But the way everything is intertwined and interconnected, it's the mass of a basketball just fit into little body me at the time. So they end up removing the cysts. They remove my appendix. Everything is done laparoscopically. Everything goes great. And I'm in the hospital for a night, and then I go home. And I don't know if you know this. You probably don't know this. I haven't shared this on the podcast. My dad is a doctor. And something that was really common for me growing up is not being on medication longer than you need it. Very quickly, the drugs that I was given, my dad tried to strip away from me for the fear of getting hooked. And at the time, when this is all happening, the whole craze with Oxycontin is really hot and high. And I'm put on oxycodone. I think I'm saying that because there's a difference between Oxycontin and oxycodone. But that's what I'm put on afterwards. I'm able to walk after this operation because it is done laparoscopically. So being done laparoscopically, it's just like this very small incision that they make, and I'm able to pretty much function normally. The next day, I can walk around, I can sit up. My lungs, it's really hard to breathe. And if you have heard previous episodes, you might know that I'm asthmatic. So having anything done laparoscopically and being asthmatic, it's just making things challenging to breathe with all of the gas that's still trapped inside. So that was not comfortable. But for the most part, I'm able to get back to school in less than a week later and just do life. I did have one strange complication. This was so weird. I have no idea why this happened, but I remember something happened where my labias got inflamed. They like dropped. I was like in the bathroom, and I remember going to my dad. I'm just like, Dad, I have balls now, like legit balls. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I like show him what the situation is, and he brings me to the hospital. And I don't know what that was. I remember taking some type of a medication, and then my labias decreased. They're not puffy anymore. That was really weird. I still don't have an answer as to why that happened, but that was extremely strange. Okay, so moving on. About 2 weeks later, it is the day before Christmas Eve. And I remember just feeling so strange. I'm like sweating profusely. And I remember getting invited to my boyfriend's house at the time, like a newer boyfriend. And I said I was going to make a baklava. I'm like a new girlfriend. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to show up with this like cute dessert. Do you know how long it takes to make fucking baklava? It's a lot. I'm like buttering each of these phyllo dough sheets. It is like a whole thing, and I'm sweating profusely as I'm doing it. And I'm new in this relationship with this kid at the time. And I remember it took me like 2 hours to do my hair and my makeup, not because it actually took me 2 hours, but I was just struggling. And I remember going to dinner at his house with my baklava. This is also his parents' first time interacting with me. And they must have thought I was crazy. I just felt so dead in the face, and I didn't know what was wrong. So anyways, I get home, and I remember just collapsing to the couch. It's late. Nobody's really checking in on me. And I fall asleep on the couch, and I wake up around midnight, and I crawl to the bottom of the stairs, and I'm crying hysterically. And I'm calling up the stairs because my parents' bedroom is upstairs, and I'm crying, help me, please help me. And finally, my dad wakes up. He comes down the stairs, and he brings me back to the hospital. And we do some tests. I'm just totally drugged up at this point. I'm in so much pain. And what happened was there was an infection. There was an abscess. And I'm in this emergency surgery. And I remember, this is like a really shitty memory, but I remember waking up a little bit too early. So the procedure has been done, and I wake up as they're rolling me to the post-op room. And I just hear these nurses like making comments about how, I wish I didn't have to be here on Christmas Eve, and just like making me feel like I was a burden. And I literally remember saying that. I have this memory saying, I'm sorry, you have to be here because of me right now. Just so sad. I just feel like so bad for little 17-year-old me, because I was not a burden. This was their job, and they should not have been making the comments that they were making, knowing that I was there, even though they must have been assuming that I was incoherent. Anyways, I remember waking up the next day, and this procedure as well has been done laparoscopically. And I remember feeling so miserable. It's Christmas Day at this point, and I'm getting like shots and injections in my stomach, and I have another catheter. Catheters are never fun if you haven't ever had one. They put this device into your body so that you don't have to get up out of bed to pee, right? You're just like naturally peeing into this bag. And I have this stuff on my legs to make sure there's no blood clots that are forming. And I'm like bedridden from this infection for about a week and a half. And I remember just being in the hospital and feeling like this just sucks. This is the worst thing. I would give anything to be able to move on my feet. And then once I'm released from the hospital, I'm put right back into school. And then we see that I'm still having pain. And the pain's coming back now. I'm close to getting my period. And the doctors, I remember asking me the question, do you want to be a mom one day? And 17-year-old me was like, no, I don't know. I haven't really thought that seriously about it. And then they were like, okay, you need to start thinking about it because we are potentially going to remove everything that's going on the inside. Because they were saying the pain I was getting was because the cysts were coming back. And in order to potentially get pregnant one day, they were considering keeping one of my ovaries, one of my fallopian tubes, and getting rid of the other, versus having to just like continuously go in and drain these cysts or get a hysterectomy. So I end up saying that I would like to try to save one ovary, one fallopian tube. So I go back in for another surgery. And at this point, I've been in the hospital within a month and a half. Each of these procedures are happening a month and a half in between. And at no point in time have I had any physical therapy. I get this procedure done, and this one's different. So this isn't being done laparoscopically anymore. It's not like a small incision. They have to go in fully. So I have this big scar across my bikini line. They remove the cysts that are coming back. They remove the ovary. They remove the fallopian tube. If you're thinking endometriosis, nope. Or at least they didn't see any of that tissue when they were inside. That's in my report as well. And they sew me back up. And I remember waking up from that procedure, and it was a completely different experience. So there's no discomfort in my lungs, but it feels like I'm wearing like a really thick belt around the entirety of my stomach. It is the strangest feeling. I've never experienced this before, but it's almost, I'm trying to think of the words to best explain it. It's like having this really thick belt around you, almost as if somebody's hugging you, supporting you, bracing you, but you feel like you can't move. And I remember the first time trying to cough or sneeze afterwards, feeling like I was going to break in half and all of my guts were just going to bleed out. It was terrible. And this procedure also was different because I could not sit up on my own. I was struggling to walk without holding on to the wall or a person. I was fully collapsed over. It was really challenging. It took me like a number of months to be able to walk on my own again. And being in the hospital was definitely helpful, you know, having a remote control with the bed to lift me up and bring me back down. But I remember going back to my house, and I didn't have that in my 17-year-old bedroom. So I would literally need my parents to help lay me down, help bring me back up. I would need help taking a shower, and it was a super vulnerable time. And I remember just feeling like I would give anything to be able to be independent. I would give anything to be able to move on my own. Just feeling like you need that much support doing things that, are private, like taking a shower. It really made me appreciate being able to move the times prior where I could move freely. And in the midst of this, there's still no PT. My dad really did not want me on the drugs for longer than I needed to be. And I just remember experiencing a few weeks of just like serious pain. I lived in the bed. For anybody who's had a baby, the underwear that they give you and like the ginormous pads, like that's what I was rocking for about a month before I even went back to school. My whole body just looked kind of like Mr. Potato Head. My torso was extremely inflamed. And in the midst of all of this, I have an eating disorder and it's really hard to eat in general. I just feel so full from all of the inflammation in this area of my body. My arms, my legs literally look like twigs. And then I just have this big inflamed torso. It was a really strange time. And Kettlebell Catalyst, the exercise guide for women to build strength, lean muscle, and self-confidence to overcoming limiting beliefs, is a book I wrote for women to be empowered to get started with kettlebells. In this book, not only will you learn the 101 details of hardstyle kettlebell technique, but you will also meet lots of women who were brave enough to try using kettlebells and hear how they transformed both physically and mentally. To buy your copy, visit Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. It also made me realize how much my abdominals used in everyday tasks. Like reaching up to get a glass from the shelf felt impossible. Trying to scrub my back or my glutes in the shower, that felt really freaking hard. There's so many things when we think about the abdominals where we don't necessarily think we're using them because we're not isolating them, but we use them in literally everything that we do. Getting up, getting down into bed, when we're sneezing, when we're coughing, when we're reaching for stuff, be it high or low, like your abdominals are integrated in every single thing that you do. So when you fully feel pain, it's really easy to see how much they are truly involved. So I fully lose sensation from belly button down for roughly 8 years. And in the midst of this, 5 years go by and I end up having another operation. I end up getting my gallbladder removed. I can't say that I had a super high fatty diet. I was not abusing alcohol during this time. I'm not entirely sure why they removed my gallbladder. I just remember having really terrible pain. And this was a pain that was unlike the appendix. It was unlike the abscess, unlike feeling a cyst pop. It was unlike anything else I had experienced up until this point. And I just remember being in such excruciating pain that I asked to go to the hospital. And they removed this. This one's done laparoscopically. I remember not going to work for about 2 weeks, and then I'm able to walk on my own again. And going into this operation, even though I still wasn't able to feel my abdominals the way I had before all of these surgeries started, I felt more prepared. And the reason I felt more prepared is because at the time I had already met Tim, and Tim was really great at explaining how involved the abdominals are. And when we're trying to strengthen them and train them, in order to not look at it from a superficial level. So I think a lot of times when people hear training abs, we think like six pack. But Tim gave me an approach to really think about the deep muscles in my abdominals. So we started training them with the 3D approach. So what does that mean? 3D, we are 3D human beings, right? Like we can move forwards and backwards, side to side, we can twist. And if you're trying to train your body for function, training your abdominals, moving through all three planes is going to get you stronger. It's not necessarily going to be what gives you six pack abs. Like you need to do different exercises for that. But to be able to strengthen deep core muscles, going about it with the 3D approach is really awesome. And before this surgery, we were doing some of that stuff just to help increase the connection, the mind-body connection that I had lost. So I definitely felt better going into that surgery and coming out of the surgery than I did when I was 17 and had no idea what was going on. But I will say, in the midst of all of this, I felt broken. So before all of the surgeries at 17, I was doing a lot of crunches. I was obsessed with crunches, like obsessed to the point of I would drop down in the middle of class or go to the bathroom and then do a set of 10 crunches. Like crunches were my jam. And after that third surgery I had, I couldn't do crunches anymore without feeling pain in my low back or the front of my neck. And something that's really important to know is when we have an injury or when we have a surgery, the body has to relearn how to do things. And due to particular circumstances, not everything is going to reconnect the way it is supposed to, which is one of the reasons why it's so important to go to physical therapy after something like that, or working with a movement specialist who can help reintegrate patterns the way they are supposed to be done. And because I didn't get anything like that, it made me feel like I am now broken. And then in addition to that, I'm also now experiencing issues with my pelvic floor. And something that's really important to take away from this episode, if you don't take away anything else, is the entire body is interconnected. So if I have an injury with my foot, it could impact my knee, my hip, my core, my shoulder, my neck. When we think of pain, a lot of times we think of the site of pain. So maybe I have a pain in my neck and you think, oh, I did something to my neck. Not necessarily. A lot of times it's a neighbor that is upset and it's taking it out on the site of pain. So if I have pain in my neck, it's probably not coming to my neck. Maybe you were in an accident, so maybe there was like an actual trauma that took place at the neck, but most of the time it's probably coming from something else, like the shoulder or a hip or a knee, all the way down to the foot, which is why it is just so freaking important to take care of your body and understand how the body works so that you can troubleshoot when pain comes up. Because listen, life happens. Pain is going to happen. It is so rare that anybody goes through life without experiencing some type of pain. So being aware of this stuff can help you just get a leg up on it. And in regards to my surgeries, what is the neighbor to the lower abdominals? Pelvic floor. So I start having this pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm having a lot of pain. Stress is upsetting it, be it mental stress with work, be it stress of working out too aggressively, sexual intercourse, orgasm, all of these different components are upsetting my pelvic floor now. And a component of that is the scar tissue that at the time hadn't been worked on or worked through, in addition to everything just like tensing up to protect that area of my body. And I think there's also a component worth talking about in regards to chakras and the energy of the body. When there is a trauma, our body wants to protect. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, is a great example of understanding that. If you experience some type of a trauma to an area of your body, a lot of times energy is going to get stuck or you are going to feel tight. And then you need to do work to help release that and get back to balance. But we're not going to dive too much into that right now. I just want to put out there that there are physical things that you can do. There are energetic things you can do. What works for you might not work for me, but both of those components were things that helped me to start getting sensation back. So moving on, I feel broken in regards to crunches, and I'm doing this 3D stuff from Tim, and I'm taking from him that this is helpful, this is beneficial, even though I still don't really feel anything in my lower abdominals. And then enters the kettlebell. Kettlebell training, hard style kettlebell training. The exercises look really simple. Neurologically, there is a lot that the brain and the body have to piece together in order to execute the exercises safely and efficiently. And it's very easy to tell if you know how to perform these exercises or if you don't. And when I got started with the kettlebell, accidentally, I was working with an excellent trainer who knew a lot about the kettlebell. And I realized for the first time how important it was to be present with yourself. Up until the kettlebell, I really did see exercise as a punishment tool versus a tool to make you feel better. I was chasing a sweat. I didn't care about moving better. I cared about how many calories am I burning and how sweaty can I get, and that's how I'm going to judge if it was a good workout or not. If I'm not sweating buckets by the end, it was a shit workout. And that was the wrong mindset. That was the wrong fucking mindset. In working with the kettlebell, I had to do a lot of mind and body work. So what I mean by that is needing to be present enough with myself to make sure the right muscles were engaging to perform an exercise correctly. So, for example, doing something like a farmer's hold. You're not just standing there for the sake of standing there. As you're standing there, you're trying to connect to these different areas of your body. And I love using the farmer's hold as an example because it's one of the few times where you're not moving, and one of the few times where you're not moving quickly. That's significantly harder to find the connection. So starting with something like this was really helpful because I was being cued in. These are the areas you're supposed to feel. These are the actions you're supposed to take in order to feel them. And I would make comments like, I don't feel my abs, even though I'm being cued in to do these things. And then we began to piece together some different drills to help increase that connection. So the mind muscle connection, it enhances the neuromuscular connection, which is the communication between the brain and your muscles. So by consciously thinking about your abs, you're reinforcing this connection, which can help in recruiting more muscle fibers and creating this ability to feel the area that you were trying to engage. And the ways we went about this were visualizations, just slowing down in general, touch, and then doing different isolating exercises. So in regards to the visualization side of things, before and during exercises I was doing where I knew I'm supposed to feel my abdominals, I would literally visualize my abdominals trying to contract and work, and just imagining the muscles almost glowing. So I would assign like a color to my abs. I would see this glowing gold light. And as I'm thinking about my abs and trying to feel for them, I can just see this glow intensify. And then in regards to slowing down, you can't slow down with something like a swing, but you can go slow with something like a deadlift. So I would perform my deadlifts really slowly, really deliberately, with the focus of finding the contraction in my abs. I would also take time where I would touch my abdominals. So I would take my hand, I would place my hand on my abdominals, my lower abdominals. I would focus on breathing exercises where I'm literally just trying to feel for the area, even though the area feels like a mouth shot with Novocaine. It just feels numb. And then I would do isolating exercises where I actually could feel my lower abdominals. So even though I couldn't feel them during crunches, I could feel them in something like a plank. And at the time, I couldn't do my plank for my feet. So I would do kneeling planks, and I would focus on tipping my belt buckle up, trying to get a posterior pelvic tilt to increase the engagement and help to build the mind-body connection back up. And in doing all of these things over time, then paired with doing kettlebell exercises that were predominantly single-sided, single arm swings, single arm cleans, snatches, where your core has to work harder to stabilize, I started to get the sensation back. And I can tell you at this point, I can feel my lower abdominals. And it's incredible to me to see that it is possible to go from Novocaine abs to having sensation back. And I don't take that for granted at all. I remember recently posting a video on social media of me doing an exercise where I'm hanging from a bar and I'm getting my toes to the bar. And a woman commented on that video of me, and she's like, "Why is this such a big deal? Like, most people can do this." For me to be able to do that was incredible, given I didn't have the sensation for the longest time. I think something else that's important to just like bookmark right here is that what you feel is a win, not everybody else would necessarily take as a win for them. And that doesn't matter so long as it's a win that you're able to recognize for yourself. Like, that is gold. And at this point in time, there are definitely certain exercises that I find more challenging, and that definitely has to do with scar tissue and having the surgeries that I have had that have impacted the rest of my body. Like, being able to do something like a pistol squat, I find really challenging. Meanwhile, I could do a weighted dragon squat for days. And from all of the different physical therapists and movement specialists that I've talked to in regards to that, everything really does come back to it's probably connected to the surgery you had. And I think sometimes people don't realize how these different moments in our history really do impact what's going on now. Anytime that I meet with a client, anytime that I hear Tim meeting with a client, the first thing we ask are, what are your injuries? And a lot of times people don't list injuries or surgeries unless they're super recent. But when both of us then watch people move and something looks crazy and we ask the question like, hey, did anything ever happen to your foot in your lifetime? And somebody might say, yeah, I fell out of a tree when I was 6 and I broke my foot, but I didn't see that to be a relevant thing to share with you now. It's a relevant thing. Anytime there's any type of a trauma that has happened to your body, it is relevant when it comes to talking to your trainer, your movement specialist, your physical therapist. That all will follow you from when the trauma happened to where you are at currently. And I think sometimes people see their challenges as something that's preventing them from being able to do more. And I don't see my challenges that way. I love my scars. I love my surgeries because it has all added to my story. It's given me something to overcome. It has allowed me to have a unique experience where I've had these obstacles, I've overcome them, and they've made me stronger because I had to figure out how to move forward. The other option would have been stay stuck. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work if you're somebody who wants to transform, you want to grow. A lot of times people say there's a lot of different ways to cook an egg, and that's true. You know, just because you have had surgeries or injuries or whatever, there's probably a way that you can work around it, overcome it. You just have to find people who can help support you, and you have to be willing to try different approaches to figure out what's going to work for you. And the other thing is being consistent and letting time be your friend. So the sensation in regards to my abdominals, it took roughly 8 years for them to come back. And it's come back because of the way I train. It's come back because of the mindset work that I have done. And it's come back because I've been doing all of that stuff consistently and not playing the woe is me or playing the victim card and just being like, okay, this is what you got to work with, so work with it. Thank you for listening to the Dangerous Women podcast. If you had any groundbreaking takeaways from today's episode, please tag us on social at the Dangerous Women podcast. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe below.